everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Our Point of View. We are going to have us a good show this evening. And I'm just really excited and happy to be back before you. We've been off for, I think, a couple of days, just throughout the week, but we are certainly glad to see you here joining, and we appreciate you joining us for this episode. So, really, as happy and before I go into that, let me certainly couldn't have done this show by myself. So I want to introduce to some our esteemed guests, in that of Miss Vita Brown, and we so thank her for coming on the show with us today. And my other co-host is none other than Lynette Jackson. We thank you for coming on. Both of you ladies are looking mighty fabulous, right?
Thank you.
And but of course, we would not have all that we have. So also joining with us, pulling a little double duty, is our uh, engineer and also our guest host and musician and just that guy,
Hey man.
Big Mike Sheely.
Yes, sir. How you doing, guys? How you doing?
All right, all right. So there's a lot of activities that are going on in the month of October. I know with me and my job, I know we got Fire Prevention Week going on. I know there's breast cancer awareness that's going on, and a number of others. I remember seeing the litany of other things that are going on in this month, but included in that is domestic violence awareness. And that certainly is a serious thing. And I believe, and I know my guests will have commentary, they will have opinions and input and great information. But I believe that since the pandemic, excuse me, as we are starting to come out of it, it just seems to me, y'all help me out, it just seems to me folks are short-tempered. They talk about conflict resolution, they talk about folks being short-tempered and angry and PTSD and road rage and just all these things, which may happen, a lot may happen exteriorly, but a lot of that stuff gets brought back home and not channeled correctly. Those things get taken out on family members, close family members, folks in your home or your domicile, somewhat hence the word domestic violence. So with our guest, I certainly want to yield to our subject matter expert, I call her, Ms. Vita Brown. Ms. Brown, if you will, just tell us a little about yourself and what really inspired you to have an organization that really focuses on domestic violence awareness.
Well, thank you for having me, you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this serious issue. My backstory is I grew up in a home with domestic violence with my father. He abused my mother for years. And so I come from the perspective as a child victim having to watch my mother suffer at the hands of my father. I'm not sure if he even realized because back then, without telling my age, it did not have a name. It was just a pattern of abusive behaviors um, that my mother, I watched her go through for years. And I remember I always wanted to try to do something so that my father would not abused my mother. So I tried to take on a lot of roles like, washing his clothes and making sure his food is warm. And it was not good enough. And I didn't understand then it was not about my mother. It was not about the children, but it was about him. And so growing up, entering adulthood, I wanted to become an agent for change. I wanted to try to be the beacon of light for other families that's going through domestic violence and offer help and assistance. And that's how Sisters Empowerment was formed, because I believe that with the shame and guilt associated with DV. Women and children need some help, guidance, someone to talk to and walk with them as they're attempting to transition out of abusive relationship. Mhm.
Got it. Got it. So when you, and I know there are, the domestic violence can take on many different forms, but now would you say, what would you say is is the is a definition for domestic violence, or is that a very broad, question in terms of just what that is or what the meaning of that is?
Well, it is broad, but it's basically one person dominating or controlling others in another relationship. And it can take on many forms. The most common are physical, sexual, emotional, and financial abuse. And so, whereas it presents itself in many different forms, the basic and bottom line is that that person is maintaining power and control. And that's a weird thing when you think about how would someone want to possess others. But that's what domestic violence is, and it's unfortunate because you don't know the triggers, you don't know what's going to happen, but you know that that person is just wanting to control their partner, control the children, control the household. And it
Mm.
takes on so many different forms. And that's the unfortunate part.
Wow. Wow, that's really something. It's funny that it's interesting that you would just mention that, because yeah, control, power, domination, just having a stronghold on somebody. And we know it's excuse me, it goes both ways. And I know we'll get into that too. But I want to switch reels real quick and go to Lynette. With that, how, when you think of that and all that it encompasses, I mean, is that something that you just saw, and I'm referring back to the pandemic, that you saw just getting worse in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, or with really with no remedy in sight, or just kind of spiraling? That's what I was looking for, spiraling out of control um during that time.
I think I feel like and Miss Brown or Miss Vita, what got me, well, one thing that you said to kind of I had to really think about when you were talking about physical, emotional, mental, the financial abuse is what kind of, I didn't even think about that being a specific abuse, a kind of abuse that somebody would take on, but it kind of makes sense. And I think that when you think about it in its totality, yeah, people are under stress, or overstressed, and I think that instead of them finding ways to deal with the stress, I think they're taking it out on people if they can deal with it in other ways. Some people work out, some people talk, some have counselors, some people don't have people to go to, but you know, they're taking it out on people in the streets and, like you said, in the home. And it is worse now. Back then, and it could be that it may not be that it's worse. It's just it's out there now, because like you said, your father abused your mother, but it was like an unspoken word or unspoken thing that happened in the house, but you didn't talk about it. Now, but in addition to, people are doing a little bit too much out there. You see people killing people over mayonnaise, and I think it's due to stress. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a lot, but I just think it's out there now more so than it was back then. I think it's out there more so.
And I have to yield to my man Michael, just to kind of tap on what that conversation is like with the young people. I mean, hey, look, I had no problem saying I'm a feel good 54. uh, and loving it. But I do know that there is sometimes a different language with our young people in terms of how they communicate and conduct themselves and so forth and so on. So I asked this question to Mike. I said, Mike, what's that conversation like? Not that you're like embedded in it, but I'm sure you hear rumblings of it. Is there a different kind of language? Is there a different kind of mindset amongst the young people when they talk about it, if they talk about it?
For those that do talk about it, I feel like my generation, we're more take action. If we see something going on, we're not just going to sit here and just wait until you say so. No, we're going to bring it to the forefront. Like, hold on, what's going on? And if you don't do nothing about it, we're going to do something about it. Because most of us are actually witnesses of it because we experienced it through our parents and whatnot. So now that we're older, we're taking an initiative to make sure that it doesn't keep going on. So
Right.
I feel like for most of my generation, everybody is really stepping up and like saying like, no, this is not going to keep going on. This is a new decade. We're not going to keep moving like this.
And that's certainly a great thing too. I mean, the more, hence the awareness, and it almost like a lot of these other events that take place that are given kind of like a monthly theme. We know it's year round. It's not just for a month. Just like Black History Month. We know it's
Yeah.
not just for
Yeah.
February. It's really it's all year round.
Exactly.
So we know this is something that you're constantly working at. And to that end, Ms. Brown, with that work, how is your empowerment network? How are they working in the community in terms of building up that awareness and making it where people can really act? The say, if you see something, say something, really giving them that charge.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a very important key. We believe in education and awareness. We believe in the promotion of healthy relationships because that is a key component that's missing, I think, in our communities and in domestic violence situations. So, in addition to bringing awareness about how to talk to a family member or friend about DV, we want to also educate women to think about healthy relationships. What does that look like? What do you deserve in a relationship? A lot of times I tell women when they call us, no one wants to believe that they've fallen in love with someone that will harm or hurt them. And so, as nurturers, we sometimes try to wait to fix it. They're misunderstood. They just need someone to support them. And so, we understand that if a person at nature is a violent person or an abuser, we want them to get the help that they need. But we also want women to be aware that if you are in an abusive relationship, the warning signs, those sort of things, pay attention. And so our organization offers both. We want to bring awareness to the community, and we also want to educate women if they're in an abusive relationship to get the resources that they need to help formulate a safety plan and to get out safely. And
I have
so
a
that's what we offer to our people that call in to seeking help to get out of those relationships.
And that's really important too, because you having a plan, having a means in which to see what's coming forward, having a foresight to see that, hey, this is not really going well, and really putting that plan into action. Because there, I think oftentimes where the abuser can see perhaps the pathway that the one being abused is trying to go. So there will be all sorts of ways to keep them where they are, try to keep them right in front of them, limit their movements, cutting off contact and so forth and so on. And once that contact is cut off, it makes it really difficult to get the help or to get the assistance that's needed. So with that, how do women reach out to your, or even men, but how
Yes.
do women, excuse me, reach out to your organization for help, for assistance, or for guidance in those
Okay.
situations?
Yeah. So let me start by saying to mention that men are abused as well.
Mhm.
Our organization, we decided to support women because, of course, I'm a woman and, what I experience in my personal life. But no one deserves to be abused and everyone deserves help. But
Right.
for the women that call us seeking help, um, I want to talk to them and learn more about exactly what they need. Because when I tell you, uh, is an array of issues and concerns and services with the kids, with the financial aspect of it, Ms. Lynn, as you were saying earlier. The financial part, 99% of women in abusive relationships is finances. And so it's as if they're stuck, if you will, because if they don't have the resources available,
Mm.
then they have no other choice but to go back and remain in that relationship opposed to going to a shelter. And so we try to offer them alternatives to think about something. They have a lot of different programs now, um, and to get them to even thinking about furthering their education, seeking job placements. And we always tell them the abuse did not happen overnight. And so it's going to take work to get out of it, to get back into mainstream society, to live a peaceful and productive life. And not saying that it's easy, it's challenging.
Mhm.
And some women just don't know what to do. They're lost, so they're stuck in a situation that they realize that they may have to return back to that relationship. So we encourage them, let's safety plan.
The,
Let's
the,
get a
the,
plan of action so
the,
that
the,
when you leave, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. No, finish. I'm sorry.
No, so when you get a plan of action, it's
Mhm.
going to help you. We talk to the women about if they have a support system, maybe in another state. And if so, we want to send them back home so that they'll have a support system. Unfortunately, a lot of women, some of the women, we're seeing a trend where they meet men online and they form a relationship and they move to Georgia and I'm sure to other places as well. And when the relationship goes sour, they're stuck in a state that they don't know anyone. And that's when they call us. So it's tough work. It's heavy on the heart because if I could place and put each woman and the children that call me, I certainly would if I had a magic wand to fix it, but unfortunately, it's not that easy, and it's heart wrenching because we're seeing so much, and especially the young man that was talking 20 and 30-year-old women. You know, and my thing when I was growing up again, we were looking for career paths and things that we want to do. And they get in the relationship, and after it's over with, it's almost like if they feel like they're stuck. But I'm here to tell them that they are not. But it is work that they are going to have to do to get out of it.
I just feel like what you're saying makes plenty sense, but I think when a lot of times when those women make those phone calls, it's out of desperation at that point.
Mhm.
But it's like for the moment, because then they start thinking about exactly what you're talking about. I got to uproot my kids. I got to make changes. I don't have money. I can't move. And yeah, you're gonna put me in a shelter, something my kids are not used to, and
Mhm.
then I got to deal with. And time will heal my wounds. It just feels like in mentally me thinking that just as mental as the person abusing, man or woman, whatever it may be, but the person that's getting abused, that's a mental issue that they're dealing with too. So it's on
Mhm.
both sides, and it's very, very hard. I think that when they make the phone calls, it's out of desperation, but acting on it seems like it will be even harder to do if there are children involved, if there's money involved, like you said, and not to mention the mental and physical abuse you have to deal with, the embarrassment of it all and having to change. It just seems like it would be so hard if I made a phone call and just said that it was happening to me. What am I to do? What is going to happen a month from me from now? To me from
Mhm.
now? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, you might
Mhm.
put me in a shelter. How long is that going to last? Am I going to get
Right.
a job? Am I going to be able to take care of my kids, feed them, clothe
Mm.
them? It's a lot of things that women and men, I guess, have to think about. And it seems like it's hard. It seems like it's more obstacles, like they would have to deal with more obstacles after the fact.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, you're right. When they call, they're in desperation.
Yeah.
They are not sure what they want. They know that they want out of the abusive relationship, but they're not sure. If you go into a shelter, then that's 30 days or maybe
So
60 days.
maybe I have a question, and I think this probably is for Michael. I have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt you, Eric, about this.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So Michael, like for example, in your age range, like because I know that even high school kids, boyfriend and girlfriend, they get abused too. I read on it that you know, is it harder for them to if they're living at home with their parents and they're getting abused? Is it have you witnessed it or seen anything like that in school, college, and with the younger generation seeing because it seems as though it would be easier because they're living with mom and daddy, but then they got a boyfriend that's abusing them on the side. It seems as though,
Mhm.
but it seems like the outlet would be easier because they don't have all of that baggage, and I don't want to call it baggage, but it is what it is.
It is, right.
But do you see that more so that it could possibly be a way out for the younger generation?
Um, Most of the time, I feel like that's probably going to make it a little bit harder because the younger generation deals with a lot of pride and ego issues. Because you have to realize that they're living in a day and age where everything is on social media, so they don't want to have to deal with the aftermath of once it gets out and the parents flip out and they go to Facebook and Instagram, and now you're the talk of the whole school or the whole neighborhood or whatever. Because most of these people aren't mentally strong enough to deal with that type of stuff off rip. So now you have to deal with that on a bigger scale as far as social media. That makes it even harder. And that actually sometimes makes it worse and it leads to suicide, and that makes the suicide rate higher because now you're dealing with the emotional abuse, the financial abuse, and you got to deal with the trauma of the naysayers and the people saying, oh, you heard about such and such and this and that and this and that. And then the, oh, I told you so crowd. And then the, oh, well, that's they get. And then the, oh, I'm going to pick on you now because I know you're not strong. So it just, I feel like it makes it harder when you go to your parents. That's why I recommend people have not cliques and flocks, but have groups, like in your own age range that you can like confide in. Because nowadays people can't trust anybody because social media and cell phones and
Yeah.
people not being man and women of their word to keep secrets because integrity doesn't exist in this day and age. People don't know how to hold water, because everyone loves drama. Drama fuels the world. So now you're the drama that we're going to talk about for the next 2 months. All right, bet. Now we're going to pick at your wound. So I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah,
that's really hard, honestly.
makes sense.
Yes. And also, sometimes in those relationships, if the parents try to intervene and talk with the person that's being abused, then sometimes the parents have to make decision if they're not ready to give up on the relationship yet, that they have to make the decision to keep their family safe, that they have to act the child to leave. I'm dealing with a situation like that right now. A young lady, the parents said, you can't come there because now you're putting the entire family in danger.
Hmm.
Not to mention, with all those things, we have the stuff, these types of incidents going on in front of our faces, playing themselves out in movies, on
Yeah.
TV,
Music.
uh, you know, for entertainment purposes, to
Yeah.
for money to be made at the expense of, worst case scenario, someone's life or
Exactly.
someone's livelihood and so forth. And so along those lines, what are things that people need to consider if they're going to reach out to an organization like yours, the Empowerment Network, or reaching out to a shelter? What are some things they need to consider? Because they, going back to having a plan, it sounds like it needs to be methodical, it needs
Yes.
to be specific, it needs to be intentional, and it needs to be expeditious, because time
Yes.
is of the essence. So
Yes,
could you
absolutely.
talk about that?
Mhm. So, yes, and let's start with the shelters.
Mhm.
There are 46 shelters in the state of Georgia, so you can imagine that
Hmm.
that is not nearly enough.
Hmm.
And there's only, I want to say, 11 to 13 in the city limits. So a
Wait,
woman calls, yeah, back up.
wait, hold on.
Yes,
You said 46. Did you mean 460 or
no,
4,600?
no, I meant 46.
The state of
The
Georgia.
entire state of Georgia.
But
That's
there's
like
a
46.
there's
county.
there's 150. Yeah, there's 159 counties.
Exactly.
Right. And 46 shelters.
That's a problem.
That's
That's
the
the
start of the
problem.
problem. We
That is
need
a
more
problem.
resources.
That's the big problem. And without education and awareness, and when they are brave enough to call to say, I want out, can you help me with a shelter? Well, the shelters are almost always full. And then maybe an hour out or 2 hours in the state. But then if they don't have transportation,
I was gonna say,
or
hopefully they got a car.
Thanks.
That's what I'm talking about, the obstacles.
is the
That's what I'm
obstacles and
talking
the
about, the
barriers that
obstacles. So
it's really hard. It's really, really hard. I wish that, and we know so when they call, it breaks my heart to say, I love my relationship. I need a shelter.
what do you do? I mean, what can you say? I'm saying
It's,
what I mean,
be honest, I have to. So that's why it's so important. And everyone listening this evening, we want you to get out these abusive relationships, but we must formulate a plan.
Mm-hmm.
We have to, because otherwise, when I hear the stories about, well, me and my kids are sleeping in the car, I'm a mandated reporter, so it makes it difficult for me as well.
yeah.
So it's hard. So we have to make a plan. And
I
so I
feel
think about my mother. I go back to when she was in the abusive relationship. She kept quiet, but she made a plan. And one day she came home and said, you guys pack your bags. We are leaving. And when my father said, uh, I'm going to help you guys leave because you can't make it without me. He was a great provider in that sense. And he said, you guys will never be able to live the life that I've given you. So I'm going to help you move. And so my mother left the keys. She went to work and we all started leaving to pack for our new home together. And when he walked in the door and saw that my mother had fully furnished, purchased the house, fully furnished it,
mm,
he was devastated. He was devastated. And I think that he was never the same since because he didn't see it coming. She made a plan. I saw my mother crying. I saw her with the black eyes. I saw all of that. And through all of that, she made a plan and she stuck with it. Was it easy? I'm sure not. I'm sure not. When my father would disable her car to keep her from going to work, she thought the man next door to us was a mechanic. And so she would say, I don't know how this happened to my car. And he would say, oh, this wire came loose for some reason. And
Mm.
from that, she learned, that was one of his tactics, but it kept her working. Because otherwise, if you're not on top of your game, you'll lose your job. That finance again, where you have to solely depend on me comes into play. So we have to get a plan. We have to, when we see the warning sign, when we know this person is not the right person for us,
And
we need to get out.
I feel like it all starts with we have to get into relationships for the right reasons, because a
Mhm.
lot of things that I see in my generation is people get into relationships because they're trying to depend on somebody to help them. I feel like if you take the time to make sure that you're stable and you're secure by yourself financially, and then
Yeah.
you get into a relationship, then you can see if you really love this person or if you're just trying to use them, because then you'll look past the fact that, oh, this person has a track record of beating on people, but this person is paying all the bills and I don't have to do anything. No, you should be wanting to take care of yourself first.
That's
Because
right.
before you can love someone, you gotta love yourself. So I really feel like that's a real big problem, not even just with my generation. I feel like that's just a problem with all of mankind.
Mhm.
People date
Yeah.
because they want to be secure. Be secure in yourself. Be able to take
Mhm.
care of all of your own bills and to finance your own lifestyle before you try to finance someone else's lifestyle. Don't take on too much responsibility that you can't even handle. People are trying to be God. Stop trying to be God and be yourself. So I feel
Some people are weak-minded though, Michael. Some people they don't, and I'm gonna piggyback on what you're talking about as far as social media. You get on there and you talk about I love him. Look at us. It looks so perfect on a
Mhm.
picture, and I'm gonna post it, and look how cute we are. And then I'm embarrassed that he hit me and he hurt me, or she hit me or she hurt me, and now I can't say we're not together anymore because it's embarrassing. It's like, and I just need to move on. So I agree with you. I think that mental strength needs to it's a need. I
Mhm.
think that uh, we have to find a way to understand that it's us first.
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
it's us first. We have to make ourselves happy before we make somebody else happy. We have to be strong for ourselves, and they need to feel that we're strong. And it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen all the time, and it's not easy. It's just sad that when somebody's in a situation like that, it's just devastating to try to get out of it, and it's too many obstacles. It feels like it's just like not a way out. There's no way out.
Well, when you don't have any resources, it's almost like starting from ground zero.
But how do you get the resources? I mean, you're talking about 40 something shelters in 159 county state. We can't even get one shelter in each county.
Oh,
How do you
right.
Right. Right.
how do you petition or fight to get this? I mean, I never see this where they're fighting for more shelters.
Right. Well, that's where we all are going to have to come in and help because it's still a taboo subject.
Yeah.
It's still, and no one wants to talk about it because with
Right.
1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men being victimized, you know, no one wants to talk about it. And so the support and help that's needed for legislation to get a shelter in every county. Well, really, as big as the state of Georgia is, we need 3 or 4 in every county.
Right.
But the main thing until that, I'm like, what Michael said, is a tough conversation, but self-sufficiency is those conversations that we're going to have to start with as well. because otherwise, when they call, I'll do whatever I can. But as far as the shelter aspect of it, I have to say no more than I can say yes because they're always full. And that's a hard one. And so the some of the women that's in a marriage and they are thriving on their own, they typically call and want to know about resources to get a divorce and different things like that. But the other women, the majority of the women, the resources um, to help us help them, they're almost non-existent. And that's the problem that we're seeing right now. And we have to do something to change it. I think social media is a big driver of this behavior because, as you said, we're painting this beautiful picture
Yeah.
online,
Yeah,
and at home is totally the opposite.
totally the
Or
opposite.
if
Yeah,
you don't do exactly what that abuser is telling you to do, you're going to be out on the street with
yeah,
sleeping with your children in the car.
And I feel like even though, not even though, but I feel like sometimes with social media, people may actually record things instead of trying to go and help. They'll just record you getting beat up and laugh at you, like, ha, ha, you're getting beat up down the street. But no, like that's a problem. Like put the phone down and go and stop it and then call the authorities. Like there was one video where I don't know what the circumstance was, but this woman was literally stomping her boyfriend in the face and her friends just sitting there like, yeah, girl, get him, get him, get him. Like, that's a problem. What if this
That's the
man has
problem.
brain damage now? And now people are online saying, oh, that's what he gets. Like, no, that shouldn't be the case. That
Right.
should not be allowed. That she should have been prosecuted for that. Like, it's serious, but men, they have the biggest ego and biggest pride ever. Oh, I can't go out like no punk. I can't let nobody think I'm weak. No, it's weak not to say something about it. It's
there
strong
you go.
to be able to go and stand up for yourself. Because then once you stand up for yourself and you set boundaries in the beginning, and once those
Yes.
boundaries get crossed, you leave in the beginning, that will help stop. But until people get out of their heads and become more present, that's just with dust in the air. And I personally think that this really needs to go back to the school system. They need to
Yes.
have more psychology classes at a younger age so
Yep,
that as you're growing
yep,
your brain and not just learning stuff that you're not going to even use for the rest of your life. Psychology is the most important subject in school, if you ask me, honestly.
I agree,
Especially
Absolutely.
now.
Yeah.
especially now.
Yeah.
Especially now. And so we do a lot of education and awareness, starting with the teens. I think that's key because when they grow up, they'll understand about healthy relationships.
Hmm.
And we don't talk about that. And I'm so glad you brought that up about social media because that's the driving force now. Everybody is on social media to please and whatever it is that they're doing, but the hard work we have to start as parents. They've taken things out of the school. We have to get back to the basics, so that we can all grow with healthy children in a healthy society. And the pandemic um, did intensify the behaviors, and
Hmm.
everybody is at home and confined in the home. So yes, we did see a huge uptick in cases through the pandemic, and so now we're seeing the aftermath. The abuse. They're trying to escape.
Hmm.
you know they can't take it anymore, but then they find themselves with nowhere to go.
Well, and there's so much talk about those that are, in these relationships and alternatives and what they can do and getting out of the situation. But I think in all fairness, what sort of challenges do individuals like yourself have to deal with as the advocate, as the one that's trying to help, the one that's trying to provide the service, the one that's really trying to be the catalyst for helping them get out of that situation? What about your challenges? What types of things do you have to go through?
Oh my goodness, that's right. The challenges that we face, the number one challenge is the shelter issue. Number two, uh, I don't know if I ask about a support system, it seems that 99.9% of women, when asked if they have a support system, where is a family?
They don't have it.
It's a
They
ghost
don't have it.
town.
It's ghost town. And so with that, and then when asking the resources, because again, about employment, uh, different things like that, it's non-existent for so many women. So we find ourselves struggling trying to figure out, what do we do with this person? We don't want to say, okay, well, we don't have any resources, then you need to go back to the abuser. And sometimes they just don't have any other choices, because one of the things we want to do, talking about that support system, if they're from another state, and there's a lot of people living in Georgia from other places, and then we want to put you back on a plane or a bus with your family so that you can have the support you need to start over, but they don't want to do it. Opposed to, again, with the shelters, if we did have an opening, they don't want to go because they'll say, well, how can I explain to my children that we're having to live in a shelter now?
Yeah, be
So
open and honest.
yeah, you have to be, because one thing about it, talking about the children, they see the big picture. I saw
Yeah,
the big picture. So they know that something is going on, and they may not know exactly, but they know that it's something that does not feel right.
that's
It's
right.
not healthy. And so then when you tell us, well, I don't want to go to the shelter because I don't know how to explain it to my children. And I think I understand, um, when you're in survival mode, but when you're in survival mode,
Right.
how many options and choices do you have?
Mm.
You don't have many.
You don't.
Oh,
And it got to be stressful on both sides. So stressful for the person getting abused, and
Mhm.
it's stressful for the ones that's trying to help the person that is getting
Yes.
abused. So it's like, what is the answer?
It's a
Because I could not sleep listening to a young lady call saying, "Please help me,"
right.
and I
And I
can't
can't,
help them.
right.
That is so hard. I wouldn't be able to sleep. It's like
Mhm.
stress. It's so
So guess
stressful.
what? I have to seek mental health counseling as well
Mm,
because yeah, and so I tell advocates that that's very important
mm,
because it is something that weighs on your heart, and
mm, mm,
especially with those children, you really can't do anything to help
mm,
because if you try to support them
mhm.
and the funds, we try to help as many women as we can. So
Yeah.
our funds are completed almost immediately each year,
Wow.
trying to help. So
Mm,
it's a serious, serious, serious issue. And
mm.
education and awareness is the key. I'm going to continue to say that. I'm going to
William.
continue to promote that education and awareness and self-sufficiency
Yeah.
is the key.
Okay.
Wow. Mm, that's
So yeah, I have to sit on someone's couch too.
I mean, yeah, even the person providing the help needs help, you know.
Needs help. Yes.
Um,
Staring on you.
wow. You know, I'm a so let me go off script for just a second and ask you what sort of assistance, or what's the conversation look like between your organization and local church?
Mm.
And let the church say amen, because
Let
you
the
just
church
answered the
say
question.
amen.
Because you just answered the question
You
without
just,
saying anything.
yes,
Pastor,
and
for
that's the
mentioning all
answer, and it's so unfortunate. It's so
Wow.
unfortunate. And initially,
Mm.
I thought, well, maybe I'm not getting the, oh, I'm so sorry. Maybe I'm not getting the message out,
Right.
but they don't want, you know why? We talked about earlier in the show, power and control.
That is sad.
It is, but it's so true. And as we talked about the 46 shelters, we do not have that problem with churches in the state of Georgia, correct? And if
Yeah.
all the churches would rally with us and help us, but it's unfortunately it's not. And I
Wow.
hate to say that. I really, well, no, I don't. No, I don't.
I was gonna say
Because
it's
now
fact.
it's time to, yeah, now it's time to be honest and shine the spotlight.
And speak on it. Exactly. It's a
They
church.
need to
Yeah.
step up to the plate. They have to. But
Yeah.
they'll say, oh, well, we don't have uh, that going on in our church. Excuse me?
yes, you do. They're just not saying it.
There
And
you go.
when you
Excuse
did
me?
say it, you
And
turned it
some of the
away.
pastors, unfortunately, are abusing. I said it.
Mm.
I
Wow.
said it. First ladies, those that have escaped, talk to some of them. And so that's when I started to learn, okay, I understand a little bit better now why a lot of them, all these churches in the state of Georgia alone, I know of maybe 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 churches that's progressive enough to talk and deal with the issue.
And how much you want to bet they're not one of the bigger churches?
Absolutely.
The bigger churches that probably do have the resources and do have the wherewithal and probably the funding and the personnel,
Right.
the wow.
One of the things we wanted to form is that, particularly with your mega churches, you have enough space in that church to build a couple of rooms for
Exactly.
some families to stay until we can find resources for them and get them back on track.
It's sad because you have people that, and Eric, you probably would know more about this, where there are people that they put in hiding for snitching and
Oh
treat them
yeah.
so much
Right.
better. You know that they'll treat them like gold and put them in hiding, give them different identity and money in their pocket. They treat them
Mhm.
better than a person that's getting abused. And
Mhm.
then you eventually see that person, unfortunately, on the news saying that he or she done killed, they were killed by their
Mhm.
partner or spouse. And this is some, and you take better care of somebody because they testified on the stand about somebody else doing wrong, and they put them away and letting them live happily ever after in some town somewhere, as opposed to taking care of a woman or a man who's being abused to have children and just want a better life. Mm.
Just want a better life, to live a peaceful, productive, violent-free life.
That's people talk about the home of the brave and land of the free. I mean,
Free.
who's
Mhm.
Where
you're
Yeah,
not free if you're living under those types of conditions.
yeah,
Um, y-
And
yeah.
so when people ask, well, why doesn't she just leave? Now you know. Where is she going?
Well, and that's my next question.
Okay.
What's the percentage, or what are some numbers that you're aware of about the rate at which women will return back to the home where they, or the place where they've been abused?
Well,
Mm,
first of all, a woman typically leaves 7 times before she makes the final decision to leave if she's able to. Because we know that when they decide and make the decision to leave, that's the most dangerous time. And
yeah.
so I don't though I don't have the number to the exact statistics, but it is a large number.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. It's a large number. And so
I'm sure.
um when they attempt to leave, again, we talk about all the barriers that they face.
Right.
So they go back, but typically 7 times. And then we have seen that 7th time, if they finally make it. We just had a case here in Clayton County a couple of weeks ago where the young lady, she finally left. Her son was still at the home, and she decided she was going to go back to the home to get some items. And the abuser came in and shot her,
Mm.
killed her, and it's gonna, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. And if we don't do something to work together about the impact and talk about it, we're gonna lose a lot more because, as you said earlier, after the pandemic, I don't know what it is. People are mean, mad, in a rage, and so it's so easy to ignite,
But we're not speaking on it enough,
but
though.
we're not speaking on it
I
enough.
mean, we're talking about it here today on our point of view, which is great.
Right.
We got so many platforms that need to be talking about this. Is so, yeah, you have the news that's constantly talking about every day somebody's gotten killed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You talk about it so much, but nobody, I never see anything or hear anything about
Plan of
resolution or
action.
make it. Yes,
Mhm.
yes, like a 10-step process program or something saying, okay, you're in a situation. Okay, let's start from again, or something. I don't know the answer, but I know that I'm watching the news all the time and I'm seeing all these killings and all this, and I don't see anything else being done about it. It's like it's not even in existence.
Right. And
It's
have we become desensitized to the issue?
right.
Yeah,
We hear it and see it so much.
yeah,
It's like, oh, well, there's another one.
yeah,
It's becoming common, sadly.
Hmm.
yeah.
And it's real sad that we're saying that, but it is becoming common. And